Man, a heck of a weekend. Holy smokes. These are weekends that legends are made from. Certainly myth is woven from the kind of weekend that I had. Let me just give you an example of my weekend. I mean, it was pretty fun. The OC Fair, the Orange County Fair, opened last week. The Orange County Fair is fantastic. First off, it's in Orange County, which means you don't have a whole bunch of skeevy types, and you're not taking your life in your hands by going behind the orange curtain. People walk around with T-shirts there that say, "Dear sweet Lord, if Jesus isn't returning anytime soon, could you please send back Ronald Reagan?" People wear those T-shirts down there. So Friday night, in just one of the best shows I've seen in a long time. Now, and I have to say this, that he came 2 years ago, and he was terrible. I mean, it just sort of blew. He got up and he had some black guy sing. I mean, it was like all a tribute to the blues and all that kind of junk. But, I don't need to go to see a performer and then watch, I don't know, Mr. Bojangles do a dance or two. The old soft shoe. But Steve Miller, professor of musicology at USC, Professor Steve Miller, put on a fantastic show. I mean, just a great show. And little did I realize that Steve Miller's first band in Dallas, Texas was called the Marksmen when he was 12. And his first band was Steve Miller and Boz Scaggs. Also, that his godfather was Les Paul of the guitar fame. So he's been playing guitar since the age of 5. Les Paul used to be around the house all the time. Some really interesting rock and roll history with Steve Miller. I mean, in his first big hit, he told the story about how at 12 years old he had this rock and roll band in 1956, apparently. And they sent out some advertisements to rock and roll was just sort of getting started. And they sent out advertisements to universities and churches and picnics and whatever else. And they were booked Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like every weekend of the summer, up through when school started. And these kids had come in to play rock and roll, and they were all 12 years old, 12, 13. I think Boz Scaggs was like 14. He was the oldest one. So just some great stories and some great fun. And just hearing all the old hits. His first big hit, I think, was 1968, was Space Cowboy. So that was a gang of fun. And, of course, the fair is great and cool. And, you walk around and you eat disgusting stuff. I think I had 3 disgusting things. I had a Klondike bar, a deep fried Klondike bar, a deep fried, which was okay. Wasn't really, you just eat the Klondike bar out of the inside of the middle of it. I had something else that was disgusting. Whatever it was 3 things. It was a deep fried Twinkie, which was delicious. Deep fried strawberry Twinkie, a deep fried Klondike bar, and something else was disgusting and deep fried. I don't know. What the heck was it? Deep fried Oreo or something like that. Anyway, just the whole point. If you can eat it on a stick or deep fry it, you can buy it at the fair. So from there, the lady Melissa and I went out to Victorville. Not what you would think it was an exciting place, but this is just how my weekends roll. This is just the kind of freaky stuff that happens to me. Now, in the meantime, I've got to read you this text. And look, and then we're gonna do horoscopes actually right away. And then Even Stevens got some very good news announcements for everybody. For those of you who are fans of the Even one. Let me see. And actually, this is really a text for you, Steve, because I'm putting this up on my Facebook page.
Oh, okay.
As something really weird. So my buddy Eric Hope, who's a very, very talented artist, and he's sort of the artist in residence at the BB King Blues Club in Manhattan, in New York City. He sends me a picture of his chest. Now, a close-up of his chest, the only reason he sends me this picture is because there's this huge red mark dead center of the middle of his chest. And it's kind of weird because the mark it's like a burn that looks like kind of a cross with wings on it. It's a really weird, it's right in the indent. It's right on the sternum, I guess you could say. Right in the end of the sternum. And it's this red burn mark that goes down in a line and then goes has two lines coming out of it at sort of a 45-degree angle going down, and then lines going up. So it looks like a burned kind of cross or star into his chest. So the only reason he sends me this is because he says, I went to a satanic bar to listen to, immediately thought of you,
yes.
to listen to Scandinavian black metal.
Yes.
Yeah.
You should have called me.
Oh, and to listen to Scandinavian black metal. And he goes, the sound engineer had black eyes. A shadow followed me home, and my cat even saw it. I had to chase it out of my yard with a cross. He says also that then he wakes up the next morning. This is absolutely true. This is from my buddy Eric. And as I said, I will put it up on Facebook so you can see it. I woke up the next morning and my super nuclear receptor, the Megan Bell, Fred Bell receptor, had burned my solar plexus when I woke up in the morning. This is a sterling silver nuclear receptor. And of course, what the nuclear receptor does is it processes out negative energy and processes out. And apparently this Scandinavian black metal stuff that he listened to, that there was so much horrific energy. Now this is like downtown Manhattan, mind you.
Nah.
That
the bar, because I've probably been there.
No, he didn't. I'll text him and ask him, but it's just to give you an idea that the nuclear receptor, the super receptor, is so powerful, and it not only does it change your molecular makeup and protect the red blood cells in the body, and this is a testimonial for the receptors, and we advertise the receptors on the show. And, please, everybody call Pyridine.com or look up Pyridine.com to get a receptor. But it was working overtime to actually process out what the negative energy that was trying to get in his body. And these are sterling silver, mind you. This is not plate. He has a sterling silver with a gold bridge receptor. I mean, he's got the best of the best receptors. And as I said, it burned his skin after this experience. So after that, okay, so he sends me this text. So I'm like, okay, great. We're getting receptors out to people. We're changing their atomic structure. We're using the receptors to process out this negativity out of people's bodies. So Melissa and I then go to Victorville. Now, I've been a fan and friend of an amazing man for quite some time. And some of you may have heard of him. Some of you may have not, but I will have an opportunity to introduce you to this man and his philosophy. He's a former U.S. Marine. He's a very skilled carpenter that's built all kinds of houses. He has, I think, 19 kids with like 40 grandchildren. I'm not even going to explain that whole situation. And he is the Lord God King process. Or should I say the Lord God King of the alternative legal process, which I call the legal process, but which has been completely hacked, fracked, stolen, and absconded with by the corporate legal system, by lawyers and the British Accreditation Registry, so that there can be no justice for anyone ever. That it has literally become the justice system, which has now become the just us system, where nobody wins but the lawyers, the attorneys. And by the way, I'm helping some people with some legal paperwork, and I tell them, don't talk to the lawyers. And I sing a little song. I say, never talk to a crocodile. Don't tip your hat to chat a while. Never talk to a crocodile, because the crocodile is going to bite you. That's all they want to do is eat you. And I keep telling people, don't get on the phone with these people. Don't talk to them. Put everything in writing, or just sit there and listen. Do not answer any of their questions, and everything will be fine. So now we meet at Denny's in Victorville. Now, this is not going to be a boring story at all. We meet at Denny's in Victorville, and there's an associate there of this man, Winston Shrout, if you know who he is. Winston Shrout, if I haven't mentioned his name already. But Winston Shrout, as I said, is the Lord God King of alternative process. And I've taken a bunch of Winston seminars, and I've listened to his discs and DVDs, and Winston's not doing a lot of personal stuff anymore. So that's why it was kind of a big deal. Now, also Winston wanted to kind of be introduced to a lot of the stuff that talk about the remote viewing and a lot of the UFO stuff and what have you. Now he has an associate that is a former policeman, and he's a badass dude. He's a badass mofo. Let's put it that way. Former policeman, former personal bodyguard for one of the crown princes of Saudi Arabia, does like personal security. And my nickname for him was Dennis the Menace. And, cause his name is Dennis and he's a menace is all I can say. And he's, like I said, badass dude. We tried telling a few offhand, off the cuff jokes. And all I can say is Dennis dove straight for the sewer. Some of the nastiest jokes I've ever heard. So we go to, and I can't tell you too much about this guy, but I'm sort of standing there. It's one of these weird encounters where we go to the Denny's. We showed up the traffic was terrible getting out of Los Angeles. We go all the way out to Victorville. And Winston had driven down to Victorville just to meet with Dennis and this other man, who I simply would call Doc or the doctor or what have you. And the guy was, so we walk into Denny's, we sit down at the table, and they'd already eaten because we showed up about 20 minutes late. So this fellow had, he was a normal looking guy. He was kind of a thick, older man. He had blonde curly hair, blonde beard, blue eyes. And he proceeded to tell me this kind of wacky tale that he was some kind, and look, the only reason I was sitting there actually taking any of the stuff this guy was talking about, because he hit all of my buttons right away, was because Winston vouched for him, Dennis vouched for him. They seemed to think that this guy was on the up and up. And all I can tell you is you just got to sit there sometimes. And once again, as my grandmother taught me, if you want to get smarter, you hang out with people smarter than you and you keep your mouth shut and you see what they have to say. Because I didn't need to impress this guy. I didn't need to talk about anything. It's just, in the course of the conversation, they're telling me that he has access to like 13 of his past lives. I'm like, okay, that's good. I've got access to 14 of mine. So I beat you there. And then that he's 123 years old, that he was born, I think my math was correct, that he was born somewhere around 1893 was what we were talking about. And then that became a running joke because he started talking about how he hung out with some movie stars and Bogart and Jean Harlow and, whatever else. And I'm like, and how old were you when that was? And what year was that? And how old were you? And he's like, I'm not playing that game, son. Then he gave us a folded piece of paper. He took out a piece of paper. Now I could see on this piece of paper that at the top of it was his name, which I'm not going to tell you because I don't want to blow the privacy of it. But it was his name, and it was and it looked like a resume or something of some kind. But he folded the paper in half, and he showed us a number at the bottom of this piece of paper that just looked to me. Once again, it just looked like some kind of resume or something because whatever it was some kind of CV or something that had his name at the top in the center. And he said to my wife, here, read this, read this number. And the number was something like, in dollars, it was quasexadrillion or something. It was some astronomical amount of money. It was like 1,000 trillion, which I think is a quadrillion. Because 1,000 million is a thousand million is a billion. And 1,000 billion is a trillion, I think, and then 1,000 trillion would be a quadrillion, I think. But I think it was like whatever was above quadrillion. It was a number with an astronomical amount of zeros on it. And he then said, well, that's how much I'm worth. Then I'm asking, and then he says he's got a warehouse full of gold. And now I asked Winston and Dennis, have they actually seen this? And they said, well, they'd seen pictures of it. And I said, pictures, okay. And how big is this warehouse? They said, well, it's about, if you look at one of those Statler Brothers furniture stores, it's about 3 times the size of those, and it's filled with gold. Okay. All right. So, and then they're telling me that this guy has like bricks of platinum that he uses as doorstops around his house. Now I'm like, okay. Then I said, so, all right. So you've got an astronomical amount of money, sir. What would you like to do? Well, I want to help America. I'm like, okay, well, how are you going to do that? Well, I want to change everything. I want to take down all the corporations. And I kept saying, and that would be a good thing. How? So you're going to take down the structure of everything. And I kept saying, well, why don't you start? Okay. And then he started really pressing my buttons because I told him what my dad used to do. And my dad ran TRW and he said, well, I knew your dad. Really? Okay. Well, a lot of people knew my dad. So, he said something like, you're thinner in the face than he is or something. And I was like, okay, well, then I don't think you knew my dad. But then he started telling me about, then he started going off about, well, did you know the moon landing was fake? And I said, no, I don't know any such thing. And I would disagree with you, sir. Well, I was the guy out at Area 51, and I was the person who hit the button that was one of the people that faked the moon landing. Okay, all right, that's okay. So that's button number one that he pushed, because I've been in arguments with people about this. And look, all you people that think that the moon landing was fake, you're just dumb. I'm sorry, you're just dumb. And I can give you all the reasons why it's not. And all I can tell you is that, again, if the moon landing was fake and the whole thing was done by Stanley Kubrick, then please explain all the anomalies that do not fit the NASA story about what's going on with the moon. And I'll leave it there. Please show me how between 1969 and 1972 we had slow motion video technology. Tell me about that. And what I've tried to explain to people is that there was a whole bunch of publicity that was snuck into the NASA stuff to make it more presentable to the public. So yeah, they faked some things that they threw in with the real stuff, but you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's number one. Number two, they are not telling you the truth about the nature of the moon and what it actually is, nor that the moon has 60% the gravity of the Earth, not 1/6, that there's atmosphere on the moon, there are clouds on the moon, there are quite possibly places on the moon where you can actually get out and walk around with some decompression and some gases and whatever else. I mean, people will tell you that you will die diving at 2,000 feet, but you need different gases. You need helium or nitrogen or whatever else to breathe at certain levels, and the human body is infinitely adaptable. So anyway, so that's another thing. But he was the one that pressed the button that was one of the things that faked the moon landing. Then he started going off about how Walt Disney is a child molester. And I was like, oh, man, you really just don't know what you're talking. Oh, I got all the proof. And I said, well, I can tell you've read a bunch of crap on the internet, sir. Then what else did he tell me? So he tried to tell me then he's got quadrillions of dollars. He wants to fix the world. And I said, then why? And then he started telling me about experiments that he has, or I'm sorry, devices that he has, where he can build apparently like tabletop teleportation machines. Things that could actually then reach into another dimension, that he could put his hand in one side and you would see his hand like waving at you from somewhere else, like a magic trick, if you will. And he's got all these kind of tabletop inventions and all these stunning inventions, but he doesn't want to release them to the world because they will get him. And then with all his money, he said he put $5 billion in one bank and they stole it. He put another $5 billion in another bank and he stole it. And I said, so they just stole it. So with your kind of money, sir, why don't you just start your own bank? You can do it. I mean, you just build a big building with a vault and get the licenses. Why don't you buy a country? Then you can have diplomatic immunity. You can hire your own army. You can do whatever. No. I want to save America. Okay, really? Okay, well, pick one place in America. Why don't you pick Omaha? Why don't you pick an Indian reservation? Why don't you pick one place, build a town or a city, get people that you want to come live there, start one place, and fix everything from there. And it's like, and he gave me reason after reason after reason why, with all this money, which apparently, once again, he has two people backing him up, that he actually has this cash and actually has this kind of cash. But my questions continue. They just fell on deaf ears. And then I got to this spot where he started telling all these crazy stories. And, and a couple of occasions he said, well, son, you don't know what you're talking about. And I thought to myself, well, I can spot a sociopath when I see one. So whatever. Anyway, and then he says he's best friends with Dick Cheney. And I said, really? You got his number in your phone? I'd really like to talk to him. Why don't you get him on the phone for me right now? No, I can't bother. Pick anybody that you can put me on the phone with right now. Pick any one of these contacts whose number you can dial where we can get a message where it says, if you've reached the vice president's office. I said, I've got the White House in my phone. You want me to dial the White House right now? Here's the number. And so over and over and over again, I did these gentle pushes and challenges. And at the end of the day, this is the funniest part. At the end of the day, when he got up and left, and by the way, he claims to be 126 years old, I presume. 123, I think. 126. And he walks with a cane. And he says he's as old as he is because he uses monoatomic gold to keep himself at a certain age for this. But he gets up and he's kind of hobbling along with a cane. And I'm like, well, if you're that brilliant as far as living so long, why do you walk with a cane? And he's like, I just kind of mumbled around. So when he left, I turned to my friends and say, by the way, did he buy you lunch? And they said no. And I'm like, so did he pay for his own? No. So you just bought this guy lunch? Because he told you a bunch of stories. Okay, so here's a guy who could buy America, apparently, and he didn't even pick up the tab. Nice. Also to find out that they've done all kinds of processes for him, and they've done all kinds of things for him, never get paid. And I told him, I said, look, he can have the money that he says he has, but my stepdad, my Jewish stepfather, Frank Salomon, used to always say they're Tyrannosaurus rich, which means they look big and scary, and they got deep pockets but really short arms. And I'm like, it's like the guy who shows up and said, wow, I can't pay for dinner tonight because I've only brought $100 bill, and they won't break it. They won't take 100. Could you pick it up, buddy? So that was my first meeting with him, and I looked at these guys and said, look, I got a bunch of projects. If you want people with real money who are doing real good, then you should look at Elon Musk. Elon Musk has taken all of his stuff. He's revolutionized the electronic car industry. He's revolutionized electronic batteries and solar power. Okay. Actually, it's kind of interesting because if any of you, if you have all been feeling kind of weird and sort of dizzy today, there's a reason why. Everything's gone retrograde. I mean, all these planets have gone retrograde. The Sabian symbol for today, the Sabian symbol for the sun, if you don't know anything about Sabian symbols, the Sabian symbols are, again, it's sort of like 360 symbols for the different degrees of the sun as it moves through the zodiac that was, I don't know, made up or channeled by a fellow by the name of Dane Rudger. The Sabian symbol for this moment for the sun is a rock formation tower over a deep canyon. And for the moon, pelicans, disturbed by the garbage of people, move their young to a new habitat. It is a waxing moon, which means it's going from new to full, which is a good time to start projects and do other things. And the planets themselves, actually, strangely enough, the sun's in Leo, moon is in Sagittarius, Mercury in Leo, Venus in Virgo, Mars in Cancer, Jupiter in Leo, Saturn in Scorpio, Uranus in Aries, Neptune in Pisces, Pluto in Capricorn. We've also got, I think, like 6 planets retrograde, which is another reason why I was feeling very out of sorts. I was feeling, from Saturday night on, I've been sort of dizzy and had a weird kind of vertigo feeling, and was kind of feeling kind of dizzy and sort of sick to my stomach. So, and speaking of being dizzy and sick to your stomach, Steve, you have a whole bunch of announcements to make.
Yeah. Well,
rock and roll. Even Steven's got a big announcement. Congratulations, a laurel and hearty handshake, a pat on the back, and a go get him tiger for Steve. Go.
All right. Well, the judge says I'm going to be serving life in prison. I have to turn into. I'm kidding.
What? Oh,
I'm kidding.
Don't freak me out.
I
Yes.
have court on Wednesday, but everybody knows that already. After my show, I had a chat with Hawk, and it's been officialized. Starting August, starting the second week in August, I will have the time slots I was gunning for, which was the old Liberty Brother time slots. So Ghost in the Machine is going to be going to effectively daytime, which is just a schedule that works better for me. I know prime time's more popular, but I'm just sick of working the evenings. And so I'm going to be doing 4 to 6 on Studio B. So I'm going to be doing 4 hours straight, 5 days a week, starting with my show on B. The Monday afternoon show will be shifted, and then the Tuesday primetime show will be shifted. And I'm also freeing up my round table because just with the 5 days a week, I am pulling 20 hours. And
Wow.
I told Hawk, I know you love me and you know I'm loyal, but I don't think even you want me on that much. Because he was wondering if I was going to quit my other time slot. So we're gonna switch with JP to produce this show for a couple of days a week. I'm still producing you, Sean. Okay. That's the thing. I'm doing a workhorse. I'm doing a workhorse thing. So I'm going to be 2 hours prior to you, and then right into you in the midst of that juicy little commercial break.
There we go. Even more ums, even more ahs, even more uhs with even Stephen Travis.
All right.
I'm gonna make you put a rubber band on your wrist and snap your rubber band every time you go and ah and make all those funny sounds that you make.
Yeah, but eep, ak, or ah.
That does mean I love you. Well, congratulations for that. And if you want to talk to JP about, him doing like Monday, Wednesday, if that's too many hours for you, that's JP's happy to do it. So
yeah, JP will no doubt be a helpful part of it. All I know for certain is that Tuesdays are his days off. So at those,
oh yeah,
I
well,
I will
that's why I said
hardcore
Monday,
first into it.
Monday, Wednesday.
Monday, Wednesday now. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. No, he can do Mondays and Wednesdays. He doesn't do Tuesdays because that's when
yes, he doesn't do Tuesdays.
His ginormous, teutonically huge and hot and sexy German girlfriend, I think, that's when they put on their leather underpants and she straps them with a St. Andrew's cross or something. And that's their playtime. Here they play rough over there.
Yes.
All right, there you go. Well, congratulations, and even more, even Steven, because you know him, you love him. You gotta have him. Who's your lover? Who's your friend? Who's your pal? He'll be guiding your jungle boat through the five rivers of the world and through all the strange and the unusual, the exopolitics. And
I'm going through about 2.5 of the rivers, and you're the other 2.5 rivers.
yeah, well, there you go. So more of his unrelenting rage at the world as he shakes stamps his cloven hooves and shakes his stony fists at all of the injustices of the day. All right, so there we go. So
his fury knows no bounds.
This is true. The rest of what I can say about my weekend, actually, and how amazing it was, and then we're going to do horoscopes right after that, so we can just get them out of the way. So after my meeting with the 123-year-old man. And a 123-year-old man who faked the moon landing, who has proof that Walt Disney was a child molester, who, has quistillion dollars, apparently, like a googillion dollars out there for which he won't even pick up the check at Denny's. And I'm like, so you have all this money and we're here at Denny's. Aren't there any other better restaurants that we could possibly have gone to? In all of Victorville, you're the multi-zillion-dollar man. Now I know really super rich guys.
Did he have his private cab show up?
No, not even. No, he was driving a.
Did he have a nice car to pretend?
No, he was driving a Hummer. He was driving like a white Hummer with a license plate that had like sequins around the outside of it, which I thought was also entertaining. So with his bad leg, and I'm like, you don't even have anybody to drive you around. And you live in Victorville and you're worth all this money. Why would anyone live in Victorville that's worth all this money? So again, this guy had Tony Stark meets Hank Pym meets I don't know, whatever, meets sort of across universes, but Bruce Wayne kind of money supposedly, and he doesn't live in. I'm like, you could live in Stately Wayne Manor. You could have a Bat Cave. You could have the Batmobile. You could patrol the streets of Gotham with this kind of money, but no. And I kept asking, why don't you just start somewhere? I said, hey, man, you can fund our film company. You want to be in the film business? We can fund 40 projects with that. You could change the world and do movies and documentaries and TV stations that have your particular bent on the planet. And so there's that. So anyway, he gets up and leaves, and I'm just kind of shaking my head. And these guys are trying to tell me he's legit. I'm like, he didn't even pick up the tab for you guys. He didn't even buy you lunch at Denny's. And I also noticed that he's gotten these guys to do a bunch of stuff for him as well, a bunch of legal documentation, whatever else. All I can tell you is that then for the rest of the day, for Saturday and well into the wee hours of the night on Saturday night, and we actually stayed out in Victorville, I did nothing but just have the brain of Winston Shrout downloaded into my head. And Winston gave me documents. He gave me process. I now am convinced. I am absolutely convinced that I can beat any court case, that I can get anybody out of jail, that I'm working on 3 cases now for some friends of mine for strictly educational purposes, educational entertainment purposes, providing with information. But I believe I will have their cases won within like the next 3 weeks and get these people a substantial amount of cash for what's going on. We now also have Superman paperwork that will absolutely work. And now we're talking about this is the key. Finally, and I'll be talking about this, and we'll be putting a program together so that people can do this. But what we do is that now you change your status with the State Department, and there's a way to do it. You have to do it with the birth certificate, with the long form birth certificate, get it authenticated by the state, then send it into the State Department, and then you get everything authenticated. And we've got a guy now who will walk it into John Kerry and the U.S. Department of State to get an apostille from the State Department that will now officially change your status from a 14th Amendment again, a 14th Amendment Negro slave disenfranchised in 1866, which is what you all are now, into a state citizen and a U.S. national. And that then comes with, once you take that paperwork, down to not your post office, but you have to walk it into a federal building and go to the State Department there or their passport office there, present them with this paperwork, tell them you do not have a Social Security number, that you've been taken out of the system, and I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to be doing it in the next 2 weeks, and they will hand you a red passport. And the red passport then puts you something like 2 levels above diplomat, because now, once again, you are a non-resident alien U.S. national and not a, quote, federal 14th Amendment U.S. citizen. This then takes you out of the system. Theoretically, hypothetically, this should allow us to free prisoners as well, political prisoners and any other kind of prisoner, because now the prisoner, once his status is changed and he's not in the system, he goes to the warden and says, "Excuse me, but could you please double check my status and see what's going on with my vouchers for me to get food and housing and whatever else?" Because it's all done in a voucher system where they are taking care of the prisoner privately, and then they're reimbursed by the state. And they'll find that they can no longer get the vouchers, which means they have to let these guys go. So that's an interesting power. Meanwhile, you then take a letter. Once you've done the process and the paperwork, you now take a letter, it's like a 2-step process of what we're doing here. So it's still complicated. But you now do a public notice, and this goes directly to the new he's not the acting commissioner anymore, but the new commissioner to the Internal Revenue Service, and it goes to the Secretary of the Treasury, Jacob Lew. And then you send it to the deputy, the director of the Internal Revenue Service, that says, "Could you please update and change my status in my master file?" And now, and I knew this from before, but now I understand that all the other federal agencies use the IRS and their just Orwellian and terrifying ability to gather information. But the IRS has a master file on every single one of you. I've gotten mine. It's hard to do because I had to do freedom of information requests and everything else, but I got my big stack of paper from the IRS on all the stuff that they, the investigations and all this other nonsense with them, which basically the whole file says we don't know what to do with this guy. We have no idea what to do with this guy because he's not breaking any laws and he seems to be doing God's work on earth. But every other page of the IRS master file is also stamped, I kid you not, I swear on a stack of Bibles, it's stamped International Monetary Fund. It's either International Monetary Fund or Impossible Missions Force. I'm not sure which. I'm either Tom Cruise or I'm some kind of weird debt tax-paying slave. One of the two. I'm either Ethan Hunt or Jim Phelps. Good evening, Mr. Phelps. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds. So once you do that, they change your status in the master file. And once they change the status, you're out. You're done. You're out of the federal system. You do not have to. I'm not going to go so far as to say, if you want to continue paying taxes or income tax or whatever else, but you're done. You're done with these guys. And you now have a status where it just takes you out of pretty much everything. So, but I am now so confident with this that now I can get people's houses back. Now I can have them pay off credit card debt. Now I can do all of this with property and mortgages and whatever else. And there's a 5-step process to this. So, it was empowering. It was amazingly empowering. It got to the point where Saturday night I was getting dizzy. I mean, my brain was full. There was so much stuff that Winston was downloading into my skull and giving me paperwork and processes and whatever else that it's just great. I mean, and I begin to realize that with the legal system, with these lawyers, any sort of court case is about building a house. And none of these attorneys, the reason you can win virtually every court case now is because these attorneys start on the first floor. They don't put the foundation in. They just start with a bunch of assumptions and affirmations that are entirely incorrect, that all you have to do is then challenge. The really cool part is that any lawsuit, when you file a response, you make them the secondary people for the lawsuit, and you take the attorney and you make him the fiduciary. And you appoint him as the fiduciary, which means whatever goes forward, he's the one. If they find you guilty or whatever it is on the thing, the attorney is the one that has to pay, the opposing attorney. So, I mean, there's just all kinds of little tricks in there and all kinds of stuff. And I can't talk about it too much because, it's I'm not saying it's pearls before swine, kids. And at the same time, this is amazingly powerful and valuable technology. And I wish I could just give this out to the world. I might with a seminar or something like that pretty soon. Because what he did is he took all of our processes and just said, fix this, fix that, fix this here, and you're good to go. You know, you're doing the right thing. You're on the right track. This has to happen. You need to twist this around. You need to turn this back on the other ones. And Bob's your uncle. So if you're listening to me now and you and I have been involved in anything out there, I'm going to be contacting you. And just, for my clients and the people out there that I'm doing some work with. But, we just won your cases. So it's, congrats on the house. That, by the way, is yours. I would say congratulations on the free house, but, it's your house. The only thing I can also then say is that then we stayed out in Victorville that night, which is a horrible place, by the way. It's just, however, the houses are cheap. You can pick up a house for like $120,000. There are these big, giant tract developments out there where housing is cheapity cheap. And they had a brand new Holiday Inn, which was actually very nice. But then we went in the morning and met Winston and Dennis the Menace again and spent another, 6 hours or so just downloading process and taking notes and recording everything that he was saying. Then my buddy Will Chappell, his little girl Reese had hey, how you doing? His little girl Reese had a birthday party, and then we went to his birthday party, got her a bunch of presents. And then we went to go see the Barnum and Bailey Ringling Brothers Circus, which was the greatest show on earth. It was just completely awesome. Okay, so that's my weekend. Yeah, so what's up, caller? What's on your mind? Good. So here's how I understand the whole system works. And again, am I right? I'm not sure, but this is how I've pieced it together. I've pieced it together where it in brief, step by step. One, in order to get the income tax and all the other nonsense that comes with it, and a central bank, and basically violate the people ad nauseum forever, we then get the Federal Reserve System out of the 16th Amendment, 1913, et cetera, et cetera. So a bunch of rich people die on the Titanic. They can't stop it. So whatever. So it takes them 20 years to bankrupt the United States. So the Federal Reserve Bank comes in. By the way, we're one of the only countries in the world that does not actually have a currency that's printed by the government. So all you people think that the, quote, the U.S. dollar is the U.S. dollar. It's not. We don't have the U.S. dollar. We have Federal Reserve notes. Federal Reserve notes. It's a fact. Not only do we not have gold and silver under Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution, but we do not even print our own money. A private company called the Federal Reserve, which is about as federal as Federal Express is, as an example, prints the money. As Ron Paul asked Ben Bernanke, how can you just print $16 trillion of Federal Reserve notes and just give it away? And Bernanke said, because we can, because it's our money. We can do, it's our magazine, our printed currency, if you will. We can do anything we want with it, and you can't say anything. And no, you can't audit us either. So it takes them 20 years to bankrupt the United States. How do they do that? They print all this script. They print Federal Reserve notes, blah, 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 fuels the roaring 20s, credit is cheap. You can use these things like money. Everybody goes crazy. Calvin Coolidge manages then lower the income tax to a reasonable rate. And we have the roaring 20s. And then what happens is that the Federal Reserve then calls in all the notes. Well, now there's not enough money to go around because people have borrowed Federal Reserve notes. Now they have to pay it back in Federal Reserve notes. And now there aren't enough Federal Reserve notes in play for anybody to pay the money back. So the industry doesn't go anywhere. The workers don't go anywhere. The natural resources don't go anywhere. But now you don't have any money to pay debt. And so the banks move in and take over pretty much everything. So it took them 20 years to bankrupt the United States. The Federal Reserve bankrupted the United States. When the United States went bankrupt in 1933, the U.S. Supreme Court became the court of bankruptcy. And actually, if you go into the Supreme Court, there's 9 pillars in the front, I think 9 pillars. And then there's like 2 rows of pillars. But if you go behind the 4th pillar, there's a plaque in there somewhere that says United States Supreme Court of Bankruptcy. I think it even says like March 5th or something of, it was right after Roosevelt got in. So I think Roosevelt was, inaugurated as president, I think like March 3rd, and on March 5th, they declared the bankruptcy and a national emergency, yada, yada, yada. So here's what happens in bankruptcy. The bankruptcy is that the debtor appears before the court, which is now the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court is now acting on behalf of the creditor. And the creditor in this case are the 12 European-based Federal Reserve banks. And this is how they pretty much took over the country. So now what happens is that, okay, the United States government can't pay its bills in the currency that's been done. So therefore, the Supreme Court then appoints a trustee. And as I understand it, the trustee for this whole thing is the Universal Postal Union out of Switzerland, the UPU. Now, the United States, then there's a whole thing that gets set up where you have internal revenue out of Treasury, but then they have to hire a private agency, which is called the Internal Revenue Service, which pretends to be under the Treasury, but really isn't. Has a whole different series of codes under what's called Title 16. And by the way, if you think I'm making this up, you can actually go on the internet and look up USC Section 30. And under USC Section 30, and it's off the top of my head, so forgive me if it may not be exactly right, but under USC Section 30, I believe you can actually, and I've gone in there and seen it for myself, but there will be a group of private trusts. And I think there's about 150 of them. Number 2, private trust number 2, is the original Internal Revenue Service out of the Philippines. And it'll say trust number 2, Philippines. Now, if you go down to trust 62 is the Internal Revenue Service out of Puerto Rico. So it's an offshore corporation that only does language in the United States through a subsidiary S Corp in Delaware. And the reason that FDR had to do all this is because the Supreme Court found all these draconian federal agencies that he was setting up were super constitutional, that they were completely outside of the power and scope of the federal government under the Constitution. Right? Right. So the biggest one that he wanted to keep was the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Supreme Court said you can't have the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms because we just made alcohol legal again with, I think it was the, 20th Amendment, I think. I think 19th Amendment was women could vote, or was it before that? I'm not sure. I'm a little confused on it, but I think it's around the 20th Amendment. You guys look it up for me if you could. But we just made alcohol legal constitutionally. Guns have been legal under the Constitution since the Second Amendment. So how can you have this agency that prosecutes people for owning guns and alcohol? Now, and you'll also realize that the Internal Revenue Service taxes you. You look this up. I'm not making this stuff up. They tax you as a bootlegger or a gun runner. Because apparently those are the only two things they have any power over. So, and they also put you under the Agriculture Department, neither here nor there. So as I understand it, what happens is the IRS is then hired by the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. IRS comes after you. They take your money. It goes into the International Monetary Fund. The International Monetary Fund then kicks it up to the World Bank. The World Bank then processes it through the Bank of International Settlements, which I'm pretty sure is mostly owned and or controlled by the Vatican. So what happens is that one way or another, the money gets sent to the Swiss, to the Universal Postal Union. And this convoluted story that ends there where the U.S. government then submits its bills, its rent, its food, what have you, to the Universal Postal Union. Whatever bills they submit, the Universal Postal Union then pays those bills, basically just to keep the government at kind of always on its knees. And what's ever left over then goes to the international bankers, which goes to the Federal Reserve, which goes to pay this supposed debt, which is, by the way, made up out of nothing. And just to give you an idea of how big a scam this is, at Treasury, at the U.S. Treasury, which does mint coins, not print paper, but mints coins. The last time we had paper currency that was printed by the United States of America was October and November of 1963. And John F. Kennedy was printing it. And you all saw how that worked out. And the day after they shot him, no more money being printed by the United States of America. You want every conspiracy theory, who was behind it, who, what, when, why, where. If you mess with the dough, you gots to go. Nobody cared that Jesus was walking on the water and healing the sick and the lepers and everything else up in Capernaum. But when he came down to Jerusalem and he tipped over the table of the money changers on a Sunday, you can bet by Friday he's hanging on a cross. Because you mess with the dough, you gots to go. So there you go. So there's my whole explanation of this. So when they do send it to you, as opposed to individual master file, why would they type that on there? And by the way, why would there not be something in the ledger that says an IMF actually stands for individual master file? So there's that. Okay. Meanwhile, hey, Steve, what time do you think it is? And I say that saying, what time do you think it is? That's a cue to do something. What could it be? What could it be? Steve, you there? Wake up. All right, it's time for horoscopes, kids. It's Monday. Hey, it's time for horoscope, Steve. Oh my God. I've been waiting for this all day. All right. Okay. Apparently.
Now you may find it inconceivable, or at the very least a bit unlikely, that the relative position of the planets and the stars could have a special deep significance, or meaning that exclusively applies to only you. But let me give you my assurance that these forecasts and predictions are all based on solid scientific documented evidence. So you would have to be some kind of moron not to realize that every single one of them is absolutely true. Where was I?
All right, so there you go. So today we're going to go, because we sort of shortchanged you last week, we're going to start from the back. And, you're trying to blame this on me? Okay, all right, that's fine. We're going to start from the back. We're going to start with Pisces today for your horoscopes. Here's daily horoscope for today, Monday through Wednesday. What? All right, so here's your, Okay, so here we go. And as I said, the moon's in Sagittarius, so I hope this is right. Yep, we're all good. Okay, so here's Pisces, all right? We're going to start with Pisces and work our way backwards. Change your introducing in some way will, as you probably suspected, have a knock-on effect to another area of your world. In the same way, anyone who has played Jenga knows you can't move one piece of the tower without affecting another. Change often has a domino-like effect in our lives, and this can be very helpful too, especially when one change brings another that we didn't expect and find ourselves grateful for. So, how valued are you in the eyes of certain people? This could relate to a relationship and whether or not you're truly being given a chance to offer all you know you can offer to it. In the second instance, you could find yourself reassessing how valuable certain talents you possess are seen in a work capacity. If you're feeling undervalued in either or both departments, then the process that commences this week can bring overdue change where you want and need to see it. So that's Pisces. Aquarius. We love win-win situations. If we're reassured our efforts will result in a positive outcome, then we sometimes surprise ourselves with levels of risk we're prepared to take. In truth, there is no such thing as a win-lose situation or even a lose-lose scenario. We always gain in some way through taking action or making effort, even if what is gained is a valuable lesson we can apply in the future. Trust that losing is not a possibility where risk you're keen to take is now concerned. So soon there will be a full moon in Aquarius. That's actually, full moon in Aquarius is coming up on it's going to be July 31st. Matter of fact, I think July. Yeah. Okay. And coming up this August, just to point out, I think we have 5 Fridays, 5 Sundays, and 5 Saturdays. 5 Saturdays, 5 Fridays, 5 Saturdays, 5 Sundays, I think, in August of next month. So it's going to be kind of interesting. But also Venus will commence backward movement in your partnership sector. Yeah, something like 6 planets are moving retrograde right now. So things are going to be a simian orgy in a tubular belted object that's usually kept pickles in pretty soon. But both developments intend to help you to accept what you've chosen to ignore. The full moon will help you look at an aspect of yourself that you've chosen not to love or appreciate and learn to love and appreciate more. Venus will remove the need for you to continue treading carefully around a partnership issue, provided you're willing to alter some rigid beliefs. All will be fine. That was Aquarius. Now, Capricorn. When we look at someone who has experienced success in ways we yearn to, we sometimes believe their journey to achieving it was a smooth one. Well, it can appear they were simply in the right place at the right time, or gods of luck and prosperity took them under their wings and made the process a delightfully easy one. You might understandably believe you've been overlooked with a quest close to your heart, but evidence that you've just needed to wait your turn is coming. It probably didn't take someone long to realize buildings need solid foundations if sinking into the earth or a swamp was to be avoided. Building anything on solid foundations was just sensible and logical. It's essential. Yet with little difficulty, we can identify areas of our own worlds we know aren't on the soundest of footings. The coming week starts a process allowing you to begin to make much more solid and stable what has been ill-defined, weak, or volatile as of late. Sagittarius. Today the moon is in Sagittarius, so good day for you. You should be rather chatty and rather personable. But if an unseen force plays a part in creating situations we encounter, do they have a recipe that requires specific ingredients? Does this include pessimism or negativity? Must either be present even in the smallest of ways in any situation that presents itself. If that's true, then it has to be true that positivity and optimism must also be essential inclusions. It might appear to much of what's bad has been added to a situation now, but a taste test will soon prove otherwise. So we are bombarded with advertisements these days. We can't escape them for as long as a company believes it has captured our attention. We are subjected to a message it is hoped will be embraced with open wallets and purses. Of course, we have the option to reject that message, especially if we believe it contains little in the way of truth. This week, someone believes you might be easily persuaded in some way. They can't see how transparent they are, but you can. All right, my passionate little self-destructive Scorpios. Newspapers, television, and other media cannot always be blamed for causing us to adopt negative or pessimistic attitudes or views about what's happening in our world. If reports are unbiased, then they are presenting us with facts that allow us to draw our own conclusions. We don't have to look very hard to find reasons to be pessimistic. If, however, we want to find reasons to be positive, then they always exist. Focus more intently on those on offer to you right now. Now, are you being listened to? You're aware you're being heard in some way, but how reassured are you that what you're saying is being taken on board and understood properly? Now, it appears you might be struggling to make a point to those who ought to be listening on the edge of their seats to what you have to say. The coming week might bring a bit more frustration in that respect before the situation improves, but you can be certain you're about to be taken seriously finally. The best and the greatest of the signs, but also the squishiest and the most wishy-washiest, Libra. If you don't get everything you want, then think of the things you don't get that you don't want, said fellow Libran, of course, gay writer Oscar Wilde. Yes, there are more homosexuals born into the sign of Libra and Sagittarius than anything else. I'm surprised I'm not gay because I was in musical theater in college, and my mother was a ball-busting beast. Whilst it's true that to confirm what we want, we sometimes have to be clear about what we don't want, we can sometimes overlook how strong our position is through not having to deal with or take into account what we don't want or need. Don't make a situation unnecessarily complex by focusing on what's missing that you know should be missing. Now, Libra, are you a leader or a follower? Leaders need to be discerning where those they're leading are concerned, and those willing to follow need to be just as discerning about whose example they choose to follow. You have an opportunity to confirm or decide the example you should be setting for certain others and whose example you ought to be mirroring. It's time to present yourself in ways you genuinely want to be seen and remove assumption where it needs removing. Virgo. To get from A to B when traveling, we can, if we choose to, take a scenic and less direct route. If time is on our side and we feel we might enjoy a few pleasant distractions along the way, then that's just fine. If, though, we have a pressing need to get to B, then it makes sense to do so in the most sensible and practical way possible. Distractions are on offer to you now. Where a particular plan is concerned, you'd be best to ignore them and focus on what you need to make these happen. Now, my Virgos, what would results be if we took an opinion poll about you? What would people say? Other than that you're fussy and anal and worrying all the time and are too detail-oriented. But how do you think you're seen by those who know you or whose opinions matter? Well, if they truly know you and you value their opinion, then you know already what level of positive response you'd receive. Yet, even then, you might still be unsure they're being truthful. However, if it is a confirmation of how loved and respected you are that you need, this week kicks off a process to provide it. Leo, all you Leos, we're at the circus, and there were 16 tigers in a cage. They're not lions, but they were tigers. A well-deserved pat on the back is coming your way, a laurel and hearty handshake, and a go-get-'em tiger. Once received, there should be someone standing in front of you to receive a similar congratulations from you, which rarely happens with Leo congratulating anybody. But what you've made happen and are being acknowledged for probably was not done alone. And therefore, a certain person who played a part in it happening could do with some acknowledgement or gratitude from you. So basically, just snuggle up to him and give him a big purr, because that's what you Leos do best. Enjoy attention because you're about to receive, but make a point of remembering who helped you on the way and who helped you receive it. Now, Leo, the cosmos is encouraging you to assess value in two areas of your world. The first surrounds how you're perceived by others and the role you play or are expected to play in their lives. How valuable is your contribution, and how valuable is your contribution seen by them? Those are two different questions that need addressing. The second surrounds the value of a relationship, and the coming week could bring a turning point or closure where that is concerned. Cancer, all you crabby little emotional cancers, with all these planets that were just in your sign, oh my goodness, Cancer, you're probably just weeping and crying and every day. People are quick to complain, but slow to offer praise. If they believe all is going to plan and along the lines of what they and others expected, then they accept that and don't feel a need to acknowledge effort that went into making it happen. It is because you are ensuring something goes to plan in an expected way that a certain person is choosing to be a bit stingy in the praise department. They know how valuable you are to what they need. Soon, they'll make this clear. Take that, Art Bell. Okay, let's finish this off. Gemini. Are both of you there? You and your friend Dave, who lives in your eyebrow? A single, isolated development is sometimes enough to inspire and encourage us to wonder what might be possible. These have a tendency to appear from out of nowhere and can also cause us to stop and reassess what we're doing in a particular way, usually because they highlight something that we hadn't considered. What presents a need for you to stop and reconsider a plan now is very much worth heeding. It offers helpful insight into where you got from here. Geminis tend to not to need help with communicating effectively. Blah, 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 blah. You usually know what to say and how to say it because you never shut up in order for something to be understood. There are, of course, many ways that we can make a point, and there are also times when choosing words carefully and being able to paint images in the minds of those we're making our point to makes the whole process infinitely easier. You might actually be surprised at how beautifully and pictorially your words flow from you this week. It's like your tongue is the brush and the world around you is a canvas, my darling Geminis. Which, by the way, you're not even Geminis anymore. You're considered Stargates. And Scorpios, you're not even Scorpions. You're considered Phoenixes. But that's neither here nor there. I suppose when I rewrite astrology, and even Pluto's kind of weird because Pluto's not really on the ecliptic, but that's a whole other deal. Taurus, all you bullheaded Tauruses, everybody with me? Oh, success, they say, comes in cans, not cannots. Like magic, success can only occur if certain conditions are right, and there is always a plan for success and another for failure. Which plan we are following is entirely up to us, and a plan in any area of our world now needs a closer look. The sky doesn't imply you are wise to expect failure, but it is asking you to assess your world now because it needs a closer look. The sky, once again, you're wise to the sky doesn't imply you're wise to expect failure, but it is asking you to assess your confidence levels towards it. It appears you need a bit of confidence boost, and it's coming. Lately, Venus has been receiving much attention. Normally, at this time of year, she goes about her business, providing love, comfort, and creativity to all the signs she occupies in ways that help us all in one way or another. This week, Venus starts moving backwards along with everything else. 6 other planets are all going retrograde, and Venus commences her backward motion. So she's going to start twerking and back it up into me, baby, but that will take her from Virgo into Leo, where focus has been on matters romantic. Expect focus to shift towards home and family. Allow Venus to provide comfort about what you feel is beyond your control. And last but certainly not least, oh my God, this is Aries, and they've just been, why doesn't he get to me? I'm supposed to be first. I'm supposed to be first. How dare he put me last? That's Steve in the background because he's the ultimate Aries. How fine is the line between success and failure? It can seem to be almost non-existent at times, and when seen in such a way, it can cause us to believe success is entirely dependent upon which way the wind is blowing, what day of the week it is, or if particular deities are in a good and helpful mood. In any area of your world where you might believe chances of success are negligible, try making an effort and see what happens. Conditions might actually be perfect. Now, Aries astrological textbooks portray Aries people as determined, aggressive, outspoken, somewhat rude, warlike, but among numerous other similar traits. While it's true that you pursue what matters to you with impressive levels of determination that are perhaps at times laced with focus and controlled aggression, there are times when you need to step back and take stock of situations before pursuing them in Aryan style. This week brings a much needed and very helpful chance to do precisely that. And cue the closing astrology music if you have it out there. I know we do.
That's your horoscope for today. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's your horoscope for today.
There you go. Okay, there's the horoscopes. We got through them. All right, this is some interesting science stuff that's come across my desk. All kinds of fascinating things, actually. Later today, July 27th, German scientists will present a new experiment, and the results on the controversial, what they call impossible EM drive at the American Institute for Aeronautics and Astronautics, Propulsion and Energy Forum in Orlando, Florida. Now, the presentation is titled Direct Thrust Measurements of an EM drive and Evaluation of Possible Side Effects. The presenter is Morton, and he's a professor and chair for space systems at the Dresden University of Technology, interested in space propulsion systems and breakthrough propulsion physics. The EM drive uses electromagnetic microwave cavities to directly convert electrical energy to thrust without the need to expel any propellant. What? First proposed by Satellite Propulsion Research, a research company based in the UK founded by aerospace engineer Roger Sawyer. The EM drive concept was predictably scorned by much of the mainstream research community for allegedly violating the laws of physics, including the conservation of momentum. However, NASA EagleWorks, an advanced propulsion research group led by Dr. Harold G. Sonny White at the Johnson Space Center, the JSC, investigated the EM drive and presented encouraging test results in 2014 at the 50th Joint Propulsion Conference. White proposes that the EM drive's thrust is due to virtual particles in the quantum vacuum that behave like propellant ions in magnetohydrodynamical propulsion systems, extracting, quote, fuel, unquote, from the very fabric of space and time, and eliminating the need to carry propellant. And while a number of scientists criticized White's theoretical model, others feel that he is at least pointing in the right direction. The NASA spaceflight website and forums have emerged as unofficial news sources and discussion space for all things related to EM drive and related breakthrough space propulsion proposals, such as what they call the Cannae drive. Now, Shawyer, S-H-A-W-Y-E-R, Shawyer, has been dismissed by the research establishment for not having peer-reviewed scientific publications. Well, probably because he probably couldn't get his papers in them because they say, well, you can't break the laws of physics and publish. But White and Tajmar have impeccable credentials that put them beyond cheap dismissal and scorn. Physics is an experimental science, and the fact that the EM drive works is confirmed in the lab. Quote, this is the first time that someone with a well-equipped lab and a strong background in tracking experimental error has been involved, rather than engineers who may be unconsciously influenced by a desire to see it work. That's what nerds sound like in Wired magazine. But our measurements reveal thrusts as expected from previous claims after carefully studying thermal and electrical interferences. If true, this could certainly revolutionize space travel. So the nature of the thrusts observed is still unclear. In other words, it works, but we don't know how. Additional tests need to be carried out to study the magnetic interaction of the power feeding lines used for the liquid metal contacts, conclude the researchers. Nevertheless, we do observe thrusts close to the magnitude of the actual predictions after eliminating many possible error sources that should warrant further investigation into the phenomena. Next steps include better magnetic shielding, further vacuum tests that improve EM drive models with higher Q factors and electronics that allow tuning for optimal operation. Contrary to sensational reports published by the sensationalist press, the EM drive is not a warp drive for faster-than-light travel. It could, however, according to current experiments evidence, be a revolutionary development for faster and cheaper space transportation. Wired notes that an EM drive could get to Pluto in less than 18 months and mentions more, because apparently Pluto's the hot destination now, since we found out it has water and methane and all kinds of cool things. More ambitious ideas include a manned trip to the moons of Saturn and with only a 3-year mission time. Some damage to our theories of physics is an acceptable payoff if we get a working space drive, concludes the Wired article. Now, meanwhile, on the darker side of all of this science that's going on out there, an interesting letter has been posted. And this is, why is this part? Okay, so hold on. All right, this is part 1. Please be advised of the following. Number 1, I am breaking international laws regarding privacy and secrecy by publishing this information. And the header of this is, I'm a physicist at CERN. We've done something that we shouldn't have done. Part 1. Number 2, I'm not going to disclose my location since I know that any attempt to prove what I've seen or what I've been part of will result in my immediate and thorough extermination. My name is Dr. Edward Mantill. Oh, okay, so now he's just going to tell us who he is after saying I'm going to be exterminated. Okay, my name is Dr. All right, not the brightest of scientists. My name is Dr. Edward Mantill, and I was, technically still am, a physicist at CERN in Geneva, Switzerland. I specialize in particle and subatomic research, focusing on quark interactions. In other words, I study very, very small particles and how they interact with one another at very high speeds. Until Thursday, January 15th, 2014, I was a normal scientist living and working on the CERN campus. Most of the scientists who are involved in the branch of research that I am live on campus at the facility in Geneva and venture out only for social activities and the occasional visit home. Most of you who have heard of CERN will have heard of the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, the largest scientific instrument which exceeds 20 miles in diameter and travels under the sovereign territory of 2 countries, both Switzerland and France. The public has been told that it was constructed at a cost of tens of billions of euros for the purpose of studying the birth of the universe, and the collisions that take place within the collider allow us to a quick glimpse at certain phenomena that can only be witnessed when particles hit one another at incredibly high rates. This is not what the machine was designed for, nor is it what the machine has been used for since its inception. CERN's main purpose for building the collider was to open a doorway. Allow me to explain. The doorway idea came into fruition in the 1960s after years and years of attempting to hide UFO phenomenon, including large-scale and very public interactions such as the Roswell incident and the Battle for Los Angeles incident well before that. The government of the United States, Great Britain, and France, thank you, Sugar, and France decided to throw their weight behind the understanding of what precisely these objects were. Yes, dear. Well, come up here then. Hold on. Sugar's very upset about something. Yes, you brought me a toy. Yes, I know. Here's a treat. You want to say anything? Okay, all right, thank you. So our universe, the ideas flew far and wide. Were UFOs from another planet? Were they from another time? Or were they simply mass hysteria and mass delusion fueled by the overactive imagination of a public who were just shite scared of communists and their technology? No, they were none of those. Our universe is but one page in a very large book. Think of a closed book sitting on a table. You see each page stacked on top of one another, bound by the spine, and sandwiched between the 2 covers. But our universe is one page in a vast and all-encompassing book. And our page is certainly not the only one with rich, in-depth thought and writing committed to it. Every page in the book represents a different dimension, each with its own unique writing, and own unique story, and own unique way of isolating itself from the other pages. No page was to interact with the other, just as no ink bleeds from one page into another in a standard book. Each page is a universe in itself. Within a few short years of mathematical research and fleets of scientists working under threat of extermination, should they share their research, the book idea was finally cemented. Though many disagreed, the mathematics were there to support the book idea, and the mathematics also showed us that it was impossible for one page to interact with another, and that was until the 1980s. During the 1980s, billions of dollars of research was funneled into the idea that if we used enough energy, if we used enough force concentrated into a small area the size of a pinprick, we could theoretically tear our page and get a glimpse of the page next to ours. We could open a door from their universe into ours. When the family, which is the code name for the group of scientists that function as the head of each of their departments at CERN, were shown the initial presentation in March of 1981, many of them expressed grave concern about the ramifications of opening such a door. But in the beautiful name of science, the family decided to share these ideas with the governments who constantly funded their research. At a meeting held in Luxembourg, the heads of state of the newly formed European Union, along with the United States and China, were shown plans for the construction of a colossal machine that would enable the opening of a doorway that could be closed at our discretion. The door would be opened, and the energy levels would be measured to prove that CERN had accomplished its task, and the door would then be closed. Open, shut, simple as that. Government leaders threw endless funding at the family and the rest of CERN in the hopes of understanding what kind of power lie in another universe. Think of the possible endless sources of energy, faster than light travel, weaponry that could obliterate enemies using lasers. The possibilities for power were, in fact, staggering. So the public was fed the narrative, understanding the universe, and the family and governments really knew the truth. I am a member of the family of my division. Obviously, the original family have all retired or died out, but there is a new, younger, more eager group to prove themselves now at the helm, and the consequences of this are dire. So with that established, allow me to explain what happened last Thursday. It was an ordinary day with the LHC scheduled to commit two collisions, one at 9 a.m. and the other at 6:30 p.m. Both went off magnetically, and the experiments were deemed a success. We witnessed two full collisions, and the general group of researchers were very happy with their work. Around 7 p.m., most of the team had filtered out of the observation room, and the machine had been put into its usual standby mode. As the room emptied, the ID clip that I had on my waist, which had a built-in display and vibrator, started to go off. I looked down at the display, and it said in a very faint green writing, "Living room." And I knew right away that what they were going to attempt. I looked up from the badge and caught the eye of Dr. Celine D'Accord, another member of the family and the head of the plasma physics department, and she too had just looked up from her ID badge, and we both understood and left. Living room was a large room under the main facility located in A section. The room wasn't special in any way and appeared completely normal. This was key to hiding our true intentions. If we met in a secret underground bunker instead of the regular basement, we'd arouse suspicion every time we were going to run an experiment. As Celine and I made our way from the collider at section A, the cold Swiss air hit my face and burned as we booked it across the campus. The night was exceptionally clear, and this factor further bolstered my suspicion. They always like doing these experiments on clear nights. We entered Section A and made our way to the main building. The doors opened up as we approached, and we made our way to the elevators across the wide expanse of the lobby and the vaulted ceilings. The RFID signal given off by our name badges caused the elevator doors to open before we had even pressed the button. And as we stepped in, the doors shut and the elevator began to move. "I'll never get used to that," Celine said, referring to the degree of automation that the building displayed. We'd been scheduled for meetings in the living room, and the building knew. So the mood in the living room was never tense, but rather one of controlled excitement. The family had been attempting these tests once every 6 months for the past 10 years without much success. We had gone through several fathers of the great Dr. Bertramberg and the lesser-known and constantly drunk Dr. Yao. Each had failed to achieve what the original family had planned. Billions were spent, but no door had yet opened. "Tonight, we try 40 tera-electron volts," Father announced. Her announcement brought an immediate and total silence to the room. Family members looked from one another and some feigned excitement, others with revered concern, all with a general sense of disbelief. The last 4 trials between 1020 TeV, we've never tried anything that high. We don't know if the machine can handle a test of this magnitude. So I looked over at Celine, and she'd been frantically writing down some calculations on a piece of paper. Once we all finished, they said, excellent, then we'll proceed. Meet in the control room at 2200 hours. Now, if the machine couldn't handle the electron voltage, it could become structurally unstable and then break apart. On the other hand, if the experiment was successful and the door opened, could we close something functioning at 40 TeV? And our math had supported 10 TeV, 20 TeV, even 30 TeV, but no one had dared to go above that. Begin was the only order that Father issued. The family members at the control entered the required programming to begin the collider, and so our fateful experiment began. Release the first particle sample, came the command. A few seconds later, the sound of the gas entering the collider could be heard, and the gas started its 20-plus mile journey around the collider, gaining more and more speed. Release the second particle sample. Father, we're approaching 30 TeV. Excellent, increase it to 35, increasing to 35. At 40 TeV achieved, we looked at one another in astonishment. We had achieved what we thought was impossible. 40 TeV of energy was pushing the particles through the collider, and we were sustaining it. And the 2 particles whizzed past each other. Wait, exclaimed Father, her eyes glowing with the reflection of the computer screen in front of her. Look at the core temperature readout. They haven't changed. They're perfectly normal. Commence the collision sequence. 4, 3, 2. An ethereal blinding light consumed the room. I had never experienced anything like this before. The temperature dropped back down to 20 degrees, and the light was overpowering us. We couldn't see our own hands in front of our faces, and suddenly there was a blood-curdling scream, like someone being horribly beaten, followed by complete and total silence, and then darkness. Is everyone okay? Celine was shouting from her side of the room. I'm fine, I called back, sound off. Mantil code FAM 0113. Diaccord 0113, Chung code 0114. The family members present started to scream out their names and code designation as their eyes adjusted to the total darkness that encompassed the room. With the sound of a bang, the emergency red lighting bathed the room in a lambent glow. We could make out shadows, but no distinguishing features, and by the time approximately 2 minutes after our encounter with the white light, we still had not heard Father sound off. Where is Father? Dr. Chung called out. We all turned to the seat that Father sat in and could see a lump in the chair, but no sign of her. I entered the panel code to open the emergency exit and made my way through the escape corridor. Panic struck for Father's well-being. I turned and ran back into the control room. All of my fellow scientists were in complete and total awe. Nothing in the room was out of place, and the temperature had returned to normal. However, sitting in Father's chair was a pile of her effects. Celine ran up to the chair. Father once filled and looked down with a gasp. She's gone. All of her things are here. Her jewelry, her clothes, her tampon, everything. Where Father sat now rested her physical possessions, and she'd vanished into thin air. All right, so there you go. So that's part 1 of that, and we'll probably continue with other parts of that as we as we move forward in the week. But apparently something weird is going on at CERN, so we'll have an opportunity to explore some of that.
That sounds like cult story that was designed for Sands of Time.
Is it? Well, it's not.
I mean,
it's not Sands of Time, but it's
like the CERN guys like being the family and calling the head of their group Father. It's all very cultish.
Yeah, it does sound a little weird. Okay, a couple of let me see, because we've got like no time left here, so that's it. Okay, well, Strange Universe Manic Monday, all good. It's all fine. Like I said, if you get a chance to go see the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus, oh my God, go see it. It is the greatest show on